Joining me now, Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, 2020 presidential candidate. Congressman, what's crucial right now is that the parties do come together. I mean, there's going to be disagreements on policy, but what about this? It's difficult to do, but thinking a little bit more long-term, given your views on what happened in the aftermath of 9/11, it was hard to be someone who said, wait, and let's think for a moment.
Yeah, I think it's actually very important that you brought up that comparison, especially given today in the House of Representatives, there was just another vote to continue the reauthorization of the Patriot Act and the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, which, as you pointed out, have been abused to violate the constitutional rights of American citizens. And this is continuing this long-term effect. This was passed in the House today for another 3 years. So this isn't just a short-term change. So it's important to have that foresight, to think about what are the consequences of the decisions that are being made, and being prudent and taking those precautions necessary. The coronavirus, there are very real concerns that we need to address, one of the foremost of which is the need for testing. This is something that is directly impacting the delaying and the release of these tests to those who need it in large scales all across the country has put us as Americans in a situation where people with maybe even just very mild symptoms,
cough or a fever for
right, they're walking around and not knowing whether or not they're infectious, and not knowing, even if you're a young person who's not part of that vulnerable population, maybe you go home and visit mom and dad. I'm thinking about my parents. They're in their 70s, and I'm concerned about...
Maybe don't go home this weekend.
Well, I mean, it's something seriously that I'm thinking about.
But that's smart thinking, and it's not a blanket prohibition of... And we're worried about campaign events in the fall. If this pops back up, we assume things will calm down at some point later in the spring.
That's why this action now is so important.
We're going to get back to the campaign and where you stand with things now with Biden and Sanders in just a moment. But we have to go back to our West Coast newsroom where we have some breaking news from Trace Gallagher. Trace.
It just never stops, Laura. We're just learning now that a staff member in Senator Maria Cantwell's D.C. office has now tested positive for coronavirus. Apparently, this staff member has been in isolation since the person began having symptoms and then was tested and has now tested positive for coronavirus. We are being told that neither Cantwell or any other member of Congress came in contact with this staff member, but out of precautions, Cantwell is now telling her staff and all others that she knows in that office in the area that they should be tested for coronavirus. Her Seattle office, her D.C. office, we're being told, will remain open for her constituents to get use and stuff, but they will clean out the entire D.C. office, the Seattle office, not affected so far. Laura.
Trace, thanks so much. Congressman,
I mean,
about this.
I think this is exactly the approach. These tests need to be made available. If there's any shadow of a doubt that you feel you've either possibly been exposed or you're feeling a little bit iffy, you've got to be able to have these tests. I think when you look at countries like South Korea, this is exactly what they've been doing. And unlike many other countries, because they've done this mass testing, they're actually seeing their numbers going down instead of up.
Well, Roche makes all their tests in South Korea. They crank out those tests in South Korea. Apparently, we had a problem with the reagent, which is the thing that gives the final result. And to some extent, that continues today. A lot of it is red tape at the
problem,
FBI.
Exactly. It is red tape and bureaucracy. I know President Trump talks a lot about breaking through the red tape.
Yeah.
I think
he's already done that a little bit at the FBI.
That's what needs to be done.
Congressman, what about the state of this election right now? You heard the scuttlebutt last night building that maybe this just shows us that we have to back off campaigning and that events, large events with more than 100 people should just not happen anymore. The country is making a big decision in November. So what, we're not going to have any political events?
Yeah, there are a lot of ways to be able to continue to connect with voters, which is the most important thing. These decisions have to be made on a case-by-case basis, depending on where and what's going on in certain states. It might make sense, it might not.
For hot spots.
But look, I'm thinking like, okay, let's do a Skype town hall. If I can't go and hold a town hall, let me do a Skype town hall. Let me find ways to be able to continue to have this dialogue with voters so they can make the best informed decisions.
So when are you thinking your next big town hall will be under these circumstances?
Well, we'll see. I think this is the challenge that I've had, is that, you know, both the DNC, their corporate media partners, they're trying to black out my campaign completely. Yeah. Unfortunately, they don't want the American people to hear my message that I've been bringing to this election from day one about the sea change we need in our foreign policy. A lot of the things that you've pointed out in your angle, the lack of foresight about the cost and the consequences of continuing to wage these wasteful regime change wars.
Trillions of dollars in spending that we could have been using maybe to build up our health infrastructure.
Exactly.
I mean, you think about the men and women and the families that have suffered. You want to weep and cry. Yes. And I was part of the cheerleader brigade, and I'm culpable there. But at least at some point you learn. I would hope.
Which that point has passed us, and recognizing that the cost in human lives, military family members, our troops, and on every American through those taxpayer dollars spent on these wars that have not made us any safer.
No, enrich China. How many shots did China shoot in all those wars? Right. Zero. Great to see you, Congressman.
Nice to see you.
Stay safe.
Thank you.
We'll talk to you soon.